Hey everyone! Today I wanted to share how I write calligraphy with my fountain pens without the need for a flex nib. I love using this method when I'm writing headers in my journal entries, specifically what day and time I sit down to write. You can certainly do this method with any nib size, however I find it to be the most satisfying with my medium nib fountain pens, and we'll get into why a little bit later. If you're already familiar with hand lettering, this won't be anything new, but for complete beginners, this style that I'll be using in this video is what's called faux calligraphy. To start, I'm taking a medium fountain pen. Here I have my BENU Talisman and writing one letter at a time. If you're completely new to this, I recommend starting slowly to create a crisp, clean line. I also recommend using some sort of ruled paper, whether it be grid, dot, or lined paper, just to help ensure that you are writing in a straight line. Now for each letter, you want to extend and thicken the downstroke. I usually like to add a bit of curvature to each of the lines to make everything look more cohesive and intentional in the end. Now you'll want to fill in the space to create that illusion of a thick downstroke. I like to color it in from the top to bottom, since the ink tends to pool when you lift up your pen. Coloring in the same direction and method for each letter will also help to make the letters look much more uniform in the end. As you get more familiar with this practice, you'll see that I'm going in and creating the extra line for the downstroke ahead of time before I've even finished writing the rest of the letter. And this is just so that you don't have any extra lines intersecting with one another before you go in to fill in the extra downstroke. A good rule of thumb for creating the thick downstroke is to make a line that is pretty much parallel to the first line that you made, just with some space in between the two. And that way when you go back to fill in that space in between the two lines, in the end it'll look like it is all intentional and part of the same letter and shape. And you'll basically just want to continue this method for the rest of the letters. Remember to take your time, and you can always switch things up later to better fit your style once you get comfortable with these first steps. You can certainly do this with print instead of cursive. You can create sharper and more angular edges if that's what you prefer, whatever your preference may be. Now, the reason why I prefer using medium nibs is because it's quicker to fill in the downstrokes, and I personally just find them smoother to color with. Like I mentioned, you can certainly do this with a finer nib, like what I'm demonstrating here, but I recommend finer nibs if you're preferring a smaller size to your letters. It can be quite tedious trying to fill in a large letter with a fine or extra fine nib. So depending on the size of letters that you're going for, your nib size will want to reflect that. Now, I know that this may seem unnecessary to some since there are fountain pens with flex nibs out there that can create similar looks to these more seamlessly and in less time. I currently do not have a flex nib in my collection, so if anyone has any suggestions on what your favorite flex nib fountain pen is, or any recommendations on beginner-friendly flex nibs, please let me know down below, and I'd love to try some out and potentially do a follow-up video. This is actually one of my favorite ways to use my fountain pens, is to use them for faux calligraphy. I find it very relaxing and therapeutic to use this method to write out lyrics or quotes that are on my mind to spruce up some of my journal pages and add visual interest. I also find it to be the perfect thing to do when I'm itching to use my fountain pens, but I don't have anything to journal about, but still want to write with my fountain pens anyway. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, or if that's solely just a me problem, but it happens pretty often actually. I also find that it happens a lot now that I have multiple fountain pens inked up at a time, and I worry about them drying out and potentially wasting the ink, so I feel the need to use them more often, but sometimes just don't have anything to journal about, and I find that this is just the perfect way to use them. Well, that does it for today's video. I hope that you found it helpful, and thank you very much for watching. If you're wanting to see more hand lettering and faux calligraphy basics, I do have a couple of beginner videos that you can watch that I'll link down in the description. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below. I love hearing from you guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.